So here we are again. And as is wont to happen in environments that combine humans and machinery, a snafu occurred. Something to do with converters and hobgoblins. But regardless of the glitches and imperfections, we couldn't not give you the wonderful things that happened in the session. So you'll still hear the insightful thoughts of Nick Jaina.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
And you'll still hear the live soundscaping guitaring of Wilson Vediner, who Nick brought along with him. You just might hear a few hobgoblins singing along.
Could you play it? Could you play it in the key of demon?
Archetype musician.
Batman?
Batman brought me here. But I'm not going to tell you my identity. Okay, I'm Robin. God, always gives it away. No, I said my van brought me here.
Your van brought you here.
To the studio. Brought me to Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I got married in Austin, Texas a while ago because I was hanging out with a girl in New Orleans and we said it's really hot here.
Yeah.
Let's move to Portland and get married in Austin and save our black lab from dying of heat exposure.
Yeah.
And so we moved here because we'd been driving around for a while and everyone we talked to talked about Portland as though this is the place to be a musician.
Uh-huh.
And so we just came here and that was in 2001 and it's a good place to be a musician. You meet a lot of musicians and they're often talented and available.
Yeah.
And wanting to be in things, and you can just drive slowly by the slow bar on Southeast Grand and open up your van doors and somebody will jump in and come with you to the studio.
Yeah. Is that what... Were you playing music before all that too?
Yeah. I was driving around the continent for a while without a home and would record albums. My brother was living in San Diego and would record albums there.
Uh-huh.
And then I met this Canadian girl in Toronto and started traveling with her and I was looking for a base of operations and that became Portland, and it took a few years to get out of my basement and get out of the marriage.
Sure.
But once that happened and things started moving along quite nicely.
Was that kind of a catalyst for things happening?
It was just, I just felt like I was in that basement for a long time and arguing about, math.
Yeah.
I feel like most arguments in marriages are over math or a dog/child.
Yeah.
Who forgot to walk or feed the dog/child, or how come you said we had enough money for this and we clearly don't, and do you even understand how to add?
Yeah.
So once that was over, then I could start playing music with people.
Yeah. How did you start playing music originally? Where did that come from?
I don't know, because my family wasn't into it at all. My parents never listened to music. They didn't even really have a record player or a CD player much. And then my brother somehow got into music and started listening to he was into metal stuff, which I wasn't into, but
yeah.
As soon as he was listening to the Beatles, then from down the hall, that sort of interested me. And
yeah.
I mean, it sounded weird at first. It sounded out of tune. I don't know if the first time you hear the Beatles, it's it's wrong, right? Because it's not so
perfect,
sugary and served up perfectly on a plate.
Yeah.
Which is funny to think of now because everyone thinks of the Beatles as
Like that.
sugary sweet, but
Yeah.
or at least poppy.
Yeah.
But that was the first like turn of the screw, and got me to listening. And then I heard I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" on the radio,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I want to play that riff. You
Yeah.
know? Can I play that riff? I want to take a guitar lesson and learn that riff. And so I went into a guitar teacher, and he wrote it out, and I learned that riff and power chords and stuff. And I went home and practiced it. And literally that week, Kurt Cobain killed himself. And I remember going back to the second lesson, just having that awkward moment of like,
Yeah.
well, okay. But that was my first guitar lesson.
Was that? You said it wasn't really that supported in your family, or it was just that people weren't
They just
listening?
didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think once me and my brother started doing it, they've always been supportive, but I think it was just baffling. It was like if we just had grown horns out of our heads, Be
Yeah.
like, oh, is this possible? What is this,
Yeah.
They've always been really supportive and come to shows and stuff, but it's just, I think, baffling to them.
Yeah.
Like how you do it or what it is or anything,
Yeah.
I asked my dad to come. I played a show on his birthday once in Sacramento where they live, and asked him to come up on a song and play tambourine, which, most people you could ask that
Sure.
and it would go fine, play on the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
And I had 2 of my bandmates standing next to him, clapping along on the beat, and he was just as random as he could be. Like, you couldn't have picked more random beats for him to hit
Yeah.
the tambourine on. It was just so off. He has no musical ability, so I don't know where
awesome.
that comes from.
Yeah. Were you? So your brother also played music when you were growing up?
Yeah, he still does. And then he moved here shortly after I did, and we started a band called Binary Dolls.
Okay.
And he occasionally helps me produce an album, or we play together in certain ways, and always trying to work on projects together. But he's 3 years older, and he's always been like the guiding light of just in every little way that
That's awesome.
you could hope for. Just, hey, check out this band, or
Yeah.
have you thought of using this sort of pick, or what, any little thing,
Uh huh.
So I'm really grateful for that. I don't know what would have happened if he wasn't there.
Uh huh. That's awesome. Were your parents also? Are you close with all of them, or is it just kind of your brothers?
Yeah. They live in California still.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, actually, I'm flying there tomorrow. We're playing at. They live in Folsom now, actually, Folsom, California.
Okay.
And I'm playing at the Folsom Prison,
Oh.
the Folsom Prison, on Monday and Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
and that should be interesting.
Yeah. Have you ever played in a prison before?
I played in Umatilla Prison.
Okay.
It was one of the greatest shows of my life. It's nothing like you would. Well, it's some like you think it would be, but it's.
Yeah.
You kind of think of it as a joke, like, oh, a captive audience. They're not going to get away.
Right.
But really, when you think of what it's like to be in prison and have no contact with people, and
Yeah.
just how special it is that somebody would come into your building and play any kind of music. I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm not their first choice of what music they'd love to hear, but real people making music. The one experience I had, it was one of the best shows of my life. Just
Yeah.
the most appreciative audience. They all lined up afterwards to shake my hand. Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah. I'm a music therapy student, and I just had a practicum in the juvenile correctional facility here, and
Oh, wow.
it was just a crazy experience of just, that level of appreciation for just taking the time to come and just give them drums to play on or something like that is just this crazy release that they have no way of getting in such a limited environment like that.
Yeah.
It was a really amazing experience to
Yeah,
go
and
through that.
I mean, my first reaction, I think a lot of people think like that in a way diminishes it, because it's like, oh, they would like anything, so I'm not special. Like your ego needs that validation of like, I'm being honored
Mm-hmm.
in the highest form I can by the most discerning critics or something. But like,
Right.
it's nice to have, but why do you need that really? Ultimately, like why is it not important to go? Like me and Wilson and Victor go to Pendleton Rock Camp in the summers.
Yeah.
And it's, not to say that that's a prison, but young kids
They're kind of in prison.
out there in Eastern Oregon that are low-income families that don't get a lot of exposure to stuff,
Yeah.
cultural stuff, and these, to them, rock stars come out there and like
Yeah.
know how to tune a guitar and play rock music, and it's so impactful to them, you know,
Yeah.
versus, you know, like sometimes playing a show in a place like Portland where there's hundreds of shows a night and everyone has seen everything, and they're partly there to drink and talk with their friends, which I've done too. You know, I understand that, but like, it's sometimes not as like validating when you feel like you're just it doesn't, you know, you're a small percentage in somebody's things that have impacted their life versus like, you know, I taught one kid at rock camp a few years ago, and he started listening to my music. I have a song called Strawberry Man, and I ran into him. He moved to Portland following that, and I saw him the summer after, and his hair had grown long, and like he was like, "Hey man, I want to show you this," and he showed me his arm, and he had a tattoo of a strawberry man.
Oh wow.
He was like, "That's because of you," and I was like, "Are you serious?" But like, it's, you know, you impact somebody at that age and like change the course of their life. I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Is that what got you into music? Is the kind of impact that it has on other people, or the impact it had on you, or?
I mean, it's funny because I was thinking like from that first guitar lesson, I was always writing. I always wanted to be writing songs. I mean, I wrote songs before I could even play an instrument, you know. I would write lyrics in a book without music, you know.
Yeah.
So I always say like I was, you know, if you're born good at one thing, like I was born good at writing.
Yeah.
And I've just worked hard to try to get good enough at music to justify that, you know.
Yeah.
Because I love music so much, and I wanted to have my writing be channeled into music as opposed to, you know, writing a novel or something.
Yeah. Do you believe in that kind of like innate talent kind of thing?
I think so. I mean, if you ask people, it's not always one like marketable skill, but you know, if you really ask somebody, I think there's something that's like, this is the thing I've always been good at. I never really had to work at it. Sometimes it's a curse because it's like, you don't have to work at it. You take it for granted sometimes, you know. That's happened with me in writing.
Yeah.
There's never been, you know, like usually whatever effort I put into it, like people respond to it really well. I don't have to like, but the other side of that is like, I don't have people challenging me sometimes, saying like, hey, you should just push this an extra 50% and make it better, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like for me, singing, playing, everything performance-wise about music has been a long, long trip to try to get decent, you know? And you sort of grow up and you think like all your skills are sort of maybe equal-ish, you know?
Sure.
But then you find out like, oh, I'm actually sort of some reason inherently good at writing but terrible at singing, and it's painfully obvious to people that hear me, and it's undermining my writing. And so if I'm going to continue to do this, I gotta pull up the other boats to equal the one, you know.
Yeah. What did you do to did you like take lessons or study music? Or
I mean, it's hard, especially with the voice. It's so wrapped up with your ego and stuff, you know. It's personal.
Yes.
And so you take it personally, but I mean, it's another skill. And then, but also the good part about it being personal is work on that, to me, is synonymous with work on myself as a person, you know?
Yes.
Like all the things are about relaxing, opening up, you know, being more honest, being, you know, all those things are things that I need to do as a person too, you know? And so that's what I love about, you know, any craft, but music, like just the idea that it's a life pursuit and I'm always going to be working on it. And I'm always going to be trying to be a better person too, you know?
Yeah.
And all the ways that overlaps is great, you know? Same thing with writing. Like, I want to be more honest. I want to say things that I'm afraid of saying, or afraid my mom would hear me say, or, you know?
Right.
All those are good things, you know? Like, I want to open those up.
So is that what creating is about for you? Is opening up
Yeah.
just different channels? Is that like more an authentic view of yourself? Like, are you? Is it uncovering layers of yourself, or is it kind of like expanding out?
Yeah, expand it, like
into
trying
things?
both of those. Trying to push myself to, I think that they can both push you along. Like you can uncover something while writing, which is very much like a discovery process. Sometimes you're just writing and words come out, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay, and then you could like stick your pin in that and like have that be your base camp and grow from there. Like as a person, it's like, oh, I said that, now I can stick to that.
Right.
A lot of times words come out and then they're a lot more courageous and bolder than I really am. But then like, especially if it's a song that like I get up every night and sing for people,
Yeah.
years down the road, it's like, wow, maybe I'm actually starting to live up to these declarations of love or whatever. Maybe I could actually love that way, or whatever it is. So yeah, I think they both can help each other.
So music is kind of not only then that process that you were talking about of like having other people give you approval or whatever, but also living up to that approval that they were giving you, or personal growth kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's also rejection and disappointment. I mean, for me at least, I'm not like wildly successful in a market sense at all. And
Sure.
so a lot of the learning comes from disappointment. Playing these things that mean a lot to you, and nobody seems to care, or it's just whatever. And
So
it's
how do you reconcile that?
It's hard, but just try to think of it as part of the process. Like there's something here. There's something I believed in. Either, again, like my performance isn't revealing it, like I'm like scuttling my own ship by not being open enough or a good enough singer or putting together a good enough band or whatever that is, or it's something in the way I couch myself and market myself, like I'm just burying the interesting things about me, and to look at all of that, everything as part of the art is the only way out of it, Like, I don't want to separate it and think like, okay, I need to sell myself, so I need to like make it sexy, and I need to do something
Right.
that's unrelated to me. It's like,
Yeah.
to me, the answer is always like, okay, I'm not as successful at this. I can't just go on tour and know that there's going to be 300 people there at all,
Yeah.
And I felt like I wrote good enough songs and put enough work into to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what are my
songs-
options? I can sit around and complain and say like, why do other people get the success and why not me? Or I can say, just dig in and say, all right, I'm just going to get weirder and more myself and more in this direction. And
Sure.
as long as I'm feeding myself and still alive, then that's fine.
Yeah. It seems like defining that what success is for yourself makes a lot more sense than taking a look at what society deems successful and then going with that. It doesn't seem to be very fruitful for emotional growth or
Yeah. And my friend Wilson, who's playing music right now, when we were going through songs for my new album last year and like sort of thinking about the approach, and I had some that were more like properly recorded and polished, and others that were just looser and dirtier and stuff, and he just came to that moment where he's like, why do you want to be all polished and dressed up, like, and I don't know how he said it, but like at some point it came upon like something that I took as a mantra of like, when I'm considering what the reception might be of anybody, that basically it's what was it? Go fuck yourself, I'm crazy.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
not in a hostile way, but just in a way
Yeah.
of just like, if you don't get it, like I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is just the weirdest, bizarre thing ever, but I love it
Yeah.
and I believe in it, and it's for you if you want it. If you want to dig in there, if not, then okay.
Well, and it seems like you've managed to find at least a level of success monetarily that allows you to continue doing it. You've made a lot of albums and
Yeah.
been playing music for a long time, and
Not really, but I mean,
so how do you
in the sense that I'm alive, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's still just a choice, I mean, there are moments in the last week where I'm just like, do I need to get a job? Do I need to like, and I'm just, I just think like, am I gonna try to learn this? Like, I'm so far out of that market? Like, am I going to try to learn the skills that are marketable in some other thing? Like, I'd rather work on my music and almost literally starve. Like, I'm okay with that. You know?
Do you have kind of a faith that as long as you're following your like path or whatever, that you'll make it kind of?
I've seen enough. You know, it's good to have mentors that do that, and I've seen enough people that do that and are just like, it's almost like just saying like, you know, at least to society's perception, it's like, okay, I'm crazy, you know, I admit it, I'm okay with that, you know? And I don't actually think I am, but like,
well, society's fucked up anyway.
But just to say like, because you come across as either, you know, maybe entitled or lazy or something, it's like, I'm not lazy, like I love working, but like, I'm 35, like I just want to work on this, you know? Yeah. And it's okay if there are slow months where nobody's buying, you know, the product, whatever. Yeah. Or it's just, you know, I don't have a new album or I don't have a project and there's no money there. It, you know, it's just like fallow seasons, you know, like there are times when the crops aren't growing, and that's, it doesn't mean that they're never going to grow or that it's a waste, you know, it's just like there are those times, you know, and you just have to, hopefully you saved up some things, or you're just going to weather it somehow, you know? Yeah. I mean, the culture we live in too seems to inundate people with this idea that to be comfortable is to have excess. Yeah. And I think it makes sense to, you know, what you're doing. Just to I looked at my life a couple years ago and it's like, I'm okay with less, you know, like if it means like I don't have to get some job I hate to like pay for the TV that I don't really want, or the nice room that makes me feel trapped, then I'm not going to do that. I mean, I lived in my van for most of 2 years ago, and I was okay with that, you know? Yeah. It's just whatever. So do you think you've kind of figured out what it is that you ultimately want? I mean, I just want to be doing projects that I love and have enough money to feed myself and make those projects happen. If, you know, the only time when I feel bad is if I, you know, had a vision for something and involve people and like need to pay them and I like don't have money to pay them back, you know, like that feels shitty. Yeah. But that's all I really want is just the money to make the things happen, you know? Yeah. And then to just continue existing, you know? Do you see that as kind of a self-centered? You're talking about that selfish kind of idea a little bit ago. Do you see that as like a self-centered thing, or are you creating music like for the world, or what do you kind of see that need as? I think there's the products that people can listen to, and you know, I know it does, even if it's on a very small scale. You know, I've talked to people who it affected their lives, you know, like they were broke up and moving across the country and drove through Kansas and listened to a song and it made them feel not alone. You know, I mean, that's worth it right there. For sure. And then there's also the more tangible reality to my life, which is the creating of the projects. And I know that people like to be involved in something, you know, like a project or an event or something, you know, like even though it's like ostensibly my thing a lot of times or whatever, and I'm hiring them or something, you know, I know, and I know this from my experience too, is like people like to have like, oh, there's a thing, there's a structure, and I can participate in that. And so I really like to give people freedom to explore in that, you know? If I have a guitarist in the studio, we recorded in this studio 6 months ago, and I had a bunch of people come in and just really wanted them to just, here's the song, create your thing. I'm not going to like dictate all the notes to you, because I know if you have a talented person, like, just let them explore and then just be the editor and say like, okay, that's sort of stepping on this lyric here, so you need to cut that out or something, you know? But like, I think that's, no, I'm not saying I'm like a philanthropist, but I mean, I think at some level, I feel good about like creating things, you know, where there are projects for people to work on, and you know, I think that's a good thing to give the world, you know. This Christmas, I walked on this isthmus. This isthmus might be the Christmas where my fists are thus is twisted Isthmus on Christmas with his fists thus wispy mists and lists of wistful twists on the Christmas isthmus. The archipelago arches fellatio of archipelagos. The ratio of fellatio on the archipelago while dancing the tango to Yola Tango, and the ratio of failed fellatios on the archipelago. This Merry Christmas, this very isthmus, I am wary, and my fists are thrust thus. I am wistful and misty, and I wished your trysts weren't listed. My fists, this very isthmus.
What is it that you are working on now?
Well, there's the album we recorded here is coming out in April.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, real driving at times, and I just listened to the whole thing last night, and it felt like a complete thing. The whole, all the songs together.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, I came in here because I wanted things to get dirtier.
Yeah.
I asked Victor, the engineer, if we could dirty things up, and he abided by that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's coming out, and I'm going to do some tours to support that.
Yeah.
It'll be out on vinyl and CD, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And then I do this other thing where I have this arts collective ballet company in New York City that I sort of co-founded, and I compose music for that.
What's that called?
It's called Satellite.
Okay.
Satellite Collective. And I've written 3 ballets so far and a couple song cycles, and so we're starting a new one, and I'm writing sketches for that, and we have a couple new choreographers and need to go out there and meet them and see how they work. And
so when you're writing stuff for that, is that are you writing the music and then dancing gets composed about the music? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. But there's discussions ahead of time of like, what are you into? What kind of thing do you like? How modern do you want this? Or which is what's happening right now, the very beginning stages.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's the best thing to do in music in whatever form is to play music while people are dancing.
Yeah.
Whether that's choreographed or just at a bar where people are all my favorite moments with music are those moments. And so to get to do it, I mean, in the past few years we've been working with dancers from the New York City Ballet, which is like the Radiohead of the dance world, and so it's some of the best dancers in the world, and it's pretty great to have something that came from your head that is music that makes these amazing athletes and artists move in this beautiful way.
How did you get involved with that whole experience?
It just played a show in Michigan, northern Michigan, and this guy liked what I did, and he moved to New York and wanted to produce a ballet, and he just wrote me, and I didn't know anything about ballet, and he just asked if I would do it, and he believed in me, and I just, anytime something like that comes where it's like, my first thought is, I don't know anything about this, like I'm gonna, that's usually a good thing, because then it's like, well, I got a few months to learn. I'm gonna fake it and lie for a while until I can reliably do it, and now I've gotten to see a lot of ballet and know a lot more about it, and have written a few, and so now feel like I at least know a little bit of what I'm doing, so it becomes more legitimate as you go along.
Where do you think that ambition to push yourself comes from? Is that more of that kind of opening up kind of thing?
Yeah, it's just always like, oh, this is a thing I don't know about and never really thought about, and what's going to be out there? You know, there's got to be
Right.
something.
But some people have this like compulsion, it seems like, to just, you know, they don't mind being a construction worker their whole life or whatever. You know, like it doesn't
Sure.
matter to them. It seems like you have this ambition kind of thing in order to expand your art. Where do you think that originated?
I honestly just think like I feel like I had a childhood where I was just kind of asleep the whole time. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, a childhood through like 21 or so. You
Yeah.
know, even though I did start playing music, I just felt like all the time I spent like, you know, watching TV and just like sort of not exploring the world. Like
Yeah.
once you just kind of like get snapped out of that and realize like how much is out there,
Yeah.
and how much time you wasted and how you might not have that much left, it's just, I don't know, it just becomes this thing of like, I gotta see it all, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what sparks that,
Yeah.
because it took me a while, you know?
Yeah.
I wish
I
I-
relate to that.
I wish I had started earlier, you know? I wish there was, but I know, you grow up in a comfortable middle-class life, and
Sure.
you just sort of like take things as they are, and you think, oh, there's not that much magic out there, or there's nothing like exciting about dangerous things. But then you know, for me it was like meeting somebody when I was 17 who, or you know, like a girl that I had a crush on, and go over to her house, and she's
Yeah.
got Velvet Underground records, and she burns incense, and she bakes her own bread, and it's like, you can do these things, what? You know, I thought bread was like, came in a plastic bag, and it
Yeah.
was evenly sliced, and like, this is amazing, like it's warm and it's delicious, you know.
Yeah.
And the Velvet Underground, like you can make music like this, you know, like
Yeah.
I could make music like that, you know. Just those little sparks, you know.
Yeah.
That's why, going back to the teaching kids, you know, like
Yeah.
I always think like, if I could be that spark, you know, in any way, and not that you can force it, but like
Sure.
it could even be just in the way one of us counselors dresses, or you know,
Mhm.
walks or something, could like spark somebody that would just be like, oh, there's another way to do it. you know?
Yeah.
I'm not a freak for having thought, you know,
Yeah.
years ago that I could do that, but then nobody else was supporting that, you know.
Right. So what with the ballet stuff? How did you had exposure to like did you have to write all the music down on scores and stuff, or was it all just kind of computer?
It started
recorded?
out where my good friend plays violin in New York, and then we got a violist, another friend here, so I would write on piano, just record sketches
Mhm.
and email them to him, and he would write violin parts over them, send them to our violist, and she would write parts on them, and we'd get together a few days before the performance, and it'd be the first time we were all in the same room and come together, you know.
Yeah.
So that leads to a different sort of sort of music, you know,
Yeah.
in good ways and bad, and changing out the process. Now we have a different choreographer, and trying to make it a lot more just weird and modern. I've gotten into like recording myself lately, and I'm just interested in different timbres and just sort of messing things up, you know.
Uh-huh.
Been doing sort of classical-ish music, you know, modern classical,
Sure.
but now I'm just interested in just making things as fucked up as possible, which goes for everything, really.
Yeah. Is that what sounds good to you, or what is interesting, or
Yeah,
how do you?
I mean, I still like making beautiful things. I don't want it
Sure.
to like hurt people, you know, with my music, but like, just the more you go along, it's like, I just think like, okay, there's been 100 million songs written in
right.
a major key in 4/4 with,
Right.
you know, rhyming lyrics and whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, and I've written 1,000 of them, you know, and so like, okay, let's just try one where it's like, whatever it is, you know, like I don't even know, but like, I do a totally different approach, and there's backwards Wurlitzer, and like, I'm, you know, singing falsetto about trains or whatever, I don't know what it is, you know, but like, just for me it's like identifying patterns that I've done and sort of just trying to break out of them, you know, because music is so much just like,
Are you very analytical about it in that way? Like you actually think about what you've done in the past and try to do something different?
not when I'm at the instrument, but just in general, just like try to
Yeah.
looking through it and just be like, because it's so pattern based, and it's so like,
Yeah.
you pick up an instrument and your hands just go to the same place,
Yeah.
and you know, you write in the same keys and stuff, and just trying to be like, what key have I not written in a while, and
Mhm.
like, what, you know, do I ever like start a song with the chorus? Do I ever
Right.
start a song with a drum fill? Do I ever whatever it is, you know? how weird can I make the, you know, and weird doesn't have to mean like distorted screaming. Weird can mean, like, that's one of the great things I learned from ballet is like, you think of it as conservative and prim and proper, but like, I'd send things to the choreographer and he's like, you have to make this crazier and weirder, but think of doing that with just sitting at a piano. You can't put on a stomp box or any effects or anything.
Yeah.
How do you do that with harmony and melody and rhythm?
Right.
You know, how do you make? He's like, I want to hear something that has never happened before on a piano. It's like, it's a great thing for someone to push you to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
You know,
Modern technology definitely has just made everything accessible, kind of, and so it's interesting to go back to just 12 notes.
But it sort of at times made me think of like indie rock or pop music as kind of conservative in a way, because it can be weirder in some ways, but it's also like often weird in standardized ways that are acceptable, you know, like this distorted guitar once was revolutionary, and now it's you know, Guitar Center, like there's an industry built upon anything, you know. And so just I don't think you could ever stop trying to keep questioning, like, how can I subvert this, you know, not just for its own sake, but you get down to more honest things, I think, when you're not just playing like structured, you know, genres that exist and cliches, you know. Like when you're actually exposing something really honest, that's when you really can reach an audience, I think. And if you can do that structurally or timbrally, you know.
Well, that's what it sounded like. I was reading a little bit about the album that you guys made, and it seemed like it was very spontaneous and or I mean, that's kind of the idea behind it, right? Is spontaneity.
I would come in with songs, but the band didn't know them at all, and so they would set up, and I'd play a song and be like, people would hear it for the first time and start to come up with their parts. Sometimes we'd have 3 lead guitarists that could all hear each other as they're coming up with their parts. So one would be like, oh, he's playing high, I'm going to play down here, and he's playing washed out, I'm going to play really dry, you know. And then it's kind of like, you're not thinking of, you know, if you're in a band and you have a ton of songs and you played them all year on the road and you go into the studio, you got it all mapped out, you're in your head thinking like, oh, my favorite song's next, can't wait to get through this song, and like, oh, but it's not going the way it was that one time in Kansas City, you know. Where if you just have one song and you're in that moment and that's all you know, you don't even know what's coming up next. And maybe you did a song earlier and you can't even remember it, because that's how it is with music. Like you just, you only learned it in those 2 hours and now you can't think of it.
For sure.
I think something special happens there. You just get extra focused and you just realize like, okay, this is the time that I do my thing, you know? Studios have made this culture of like putting off things, you know? It's like, oh, we'll do that, we'll fix that later, I'll come up with something brilliant later. It's like, you have all your faculties right now. Just do it now, you know? Like, you're you, like, what are you waiting for? You know? So it's trying to get to that as close as possible.
Well, should we try a little bit of that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Play a song, yeah. Whoops.
There's another way, but I don't wanna know.
Knocking frost from ferns, pointed highway turns, corpulent designs, right out on your tongue. Mona Lisa's hung like candy apple fairs. If no one knows the key, I don't wanna know. Surgery is certain. I don't wanna know. Your pilot always lies. Sings that I have eyes. I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know.
Sounds great.
Yeah, like that.
What's the name of that song?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to know, I think.
Do you consider yourself an optimistic person?
Yeah. Why do you ask?
I think from talking to you, that's the sense that I get, but I could also see how you could be perceived as somewhat pessimistic.
From the music, you mean?
Musically
Yeah.
and demeanor.
Demeanorly?
And I mean, demeanorly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do about that.
I think you come off as somewhat shy.
Yeah.
And I think that shy people, from personal experience, I think that
Shy people are miserable.
it's easy to get projected on when you're shy.
Oh yeah, no,
you
that's
know,
true.
because you're not saying anything. So it's
Yeah. No, that's been my whole life. I don't
Yeah.
know what else to do to change it. I try. It's gotten a lot better, if you can believe it.
yeah.
But yeah. I mean, as far as the music being, it bothers me sometimes when people say, "Oh, that's a sad song." Because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand how a song can be sad. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it can make you sad, but I mean, it's like saying that's a sad dinner, or
Yeah.
something. I think there's it's dark. My music is dark a lot of times, or it's. I still think it's hopeful. Like
Yeah.
I think you can state things that are true, and that can be really inspiring, because to me, truth is really inspiring and hopeful.
Yeah.
And sometimes truth is something like we're all gonna die, or
Sure.
this bad thing happened. But
Yeah.
to me, a lot of happy music makes me sad because it's just so denying just basic realities.
Right. Somewhere like this disturbing, depressed.
And I like, to accept the terminology. I do like trying to make happy music, and I do sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like I said, my favorite thing is playing music that people dance to.
Yeah.
I keep trying to get there. I think I'm getting more there, but still, I think it's how people are always going to think it's sad,
Yeah.
no matter what I do. I mean, you know, in all the projects that I've done recently, you know, a lot of it is like making a sketch of something and sending it to someone to see what they think. You know, whether it's a choreographer or, you know, I did a film soundtrack last year, or just various other. There's a lot of things where I feel like I'm writing something and recording it and sending it to someone and getting their feedback.
Yeah.
And the most common thing that people say is too sad.
Huh.
It's too sad.
Do you think that's people misinterpreting what you're trying to do?
I mean, obviously,
or?
I can't say that they're not right, because
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a common, you know, people who don't know each other and are not conspiring against me are saying this. So,
Right.
And it, you know, a lot of times it's for, you know, for a film, it's not just me writing a song and it can be whatever mood, like it needs to fit, you know.
Mhm.
And so I'm sure that can be the case, but I do. It, you know, it frustrates me sometimes because I just don't think it's sad. It can be sad, you know, it can be dark or just sort of like, I understand for a film if it's too raw or too dark for what you're trying to do, but
Right. Do you have that experience in a live performance where people kind of get that impression from the live performance?
I mean, usually if I'm playing with a band, it's a lot more joyous, and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of
Connection and
you know, I like making people laugh too. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of laughter,
yeah.
maybe just from me, but or the band, but you know, I love live performance because of that. You know, I don't want to get together and just make everyone cry. you
Yeah.
know?
That doesn't sound very fun.
Sometimes if I'm playing solo, you know, like you don't have that same connection with other musicians, and
Uh-huh.
it can get kind of more hushed and holy. I think of it as holy, but maybe people
Yeah.
think it's just depressing.
What do you mean by that?
Just if there's not the energy of other musicians sparking you to get to that aggressive, fun, dancey place or whatever,
Uh-huh.
it tends to get more inward, you know,
Yeah.
if I'm playing solo. And I'm thinking that it's hopefully like a hushed, reverent thing, but
Mhm.
I could see that being interpreted as sad too. you know?
Yeah. Do you have? You were saying you're into truth and understanding that, or not, maybe not understanding it, but exploring being truthful. Is that related to kind of any sort of faith in connecting with spiritual things, or is it just kind of this materialist, like this is what things are kind of thing, or something in between?
I think if you add up all the evidence, everything that we could pin down and put a number on and everything, I still think if you add all that up, if there was an equation,
Yeah.
it wouldn't equal what we know is true, you know?
Mhm.
Like there's more there, you know?
Right.
Like you can't just divide up the whole world into smaller and smaller boxes
Yeah.
and put that all together and have it be the same thing again. Just the same way that you can have an amazing screen with thousands of pixels showing a tiger, but it's still not a tiger, you know? And
The map is not the territory.
you can, yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, we're aware of that. I think on some level, sometimes we're not, you know, like sometimes we
Yeah,
mistake
hard to
it
be.
in some ways, you know, it gets our heart racing or something.
Yeah.
But there is something real that you can't capture by dividing things up. And basically from science and from all that, you know,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of what I was trying to explore in that last album, the new
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
Just the idea that you can't just go further in with a microscope and determine everything and make it into equation and solve it in your brain and have that be the answer.
Mhm.
There is a magic. There's something between us.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not saying it's ghosts or Christ or
Well,
Buddha
yeah,
or anything.
sure.
You know, I think those are just metaphors for trying to understand things.
Yeah.
And then people mistake the metaphor for actual facts and then
Yeah.
kill each other over it. You know? But you know, I'm not a cold realist. You know, I
Yeah.
think there's not only is there something more, but that is kind of everything. You know, like that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Or like the magic of a moment between people and all the stuff that you can't write down. You know, the Spanish poets in the 30s called it the duende,
Mm-hmm.
which is just that idea of like all those things that make your hair stand on end and that you know are real, but that you could never quantify as words or notes on a page or anything, you know?
Yeah.
You could go to a show and it could be the most amazing thing ever, and someone says why, and it's like, well, I don't know, he was out of tune, and like it was the same song I've heard 100 times, and the words weren't particularly brilliant, but like it changed my life, you know? Like,
Yeah.
why is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's what I'm looking for, you know?
Have you had experiences in your life, like what experiences that you had that have expressed that feeling for you?
I think just knowing that you're looking for it is a big first step, you know?
Yeah.
Because if you're always focused on the little things of like, am I in tune as a bass player? You know, as a band leader, as a bass player, can I remember this bridge, and like, are we playing this fast? You know, if you're focused on all the details, you don't go to a show, for example, and think about all the details. You think about the overwhelming thing, you know, the overarching thing.
Right.
And if you're looking for that, it doesn't mean you can always find it, but at least it's a start, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When I started looking for that a couple years ago, had a show last year. The first time I've had good shows, good experiences performing, but
Yeah.
I had a show where we showed up at the venue and the other band was still sound checking, and went out with my band to the patio, and the light was really weird outside, and everybody was looking in the sky, and we looked up and it was a solar eclipse, like a partial solar eclipse. I was
Wow.
like, oh yeah, I forgot that was, and it was happening right at that moment, and you know, it doesn't last very long, and
Yeah.
if we had been able to sound check, we would have missed it, you know?
Yeah.
But we just happened to step outside and we saw that, and then my friend Sean happened to be walking by with his guitar. I was like, hey, do you want to play the show with us? You could do this guitar solo. And he's like, sure. And he jumps in and like sound checks, and we play this show, and just before the set I was just like, this is the night where all I care about, because I play with a lot of different bandmates, and sometimes people know certain songs or they didn't practice or whatever, you know, it's a lot of variables.
Sure.
And it's a lot to worry about if you want to worry, but like,
Yeah.
I got up there and I was like, all right, the only thing I care about now is just this connection with me and these musicians, and I'm this, this megaphone that collects this energy and puts it to the audience, and we all connect.
Yeah.
And that feeling is going to be joy and fun and whatever, you know. And it worked, you know. Like,
Yeah.
people missed notes and there was feedback and whatever, but like when it's going well and you accept all that, it doesn't matter at all, you know.
Yeah.
Things can break, everything can fall apart, and it could be the most amazing show ever because it's
Yeah.
that connection. And you can't always do that, you know. Sometimes things break and it sucks, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're at least looking for that and it can accept that and ride that wave, sometimes you can catch it, you know.
Yeah.
The most people, there wasn't a ton of people there, maybe 100 people, but like the show where the most people have come up afterwards saying like thank you, or like that's always the best thing, you know. Thank you, or I wish all my friends had been here, or you know, like those
Yeah.
sorts of things.
Yeah.
That's when you feel like, oh, it's not just about me or my songs or hitting the right notes, it's about like capturing that moment, you know.
Yeah.
So that was good. And I'm sure like the next show after that was terrible, and I didn't have it, you know. It's like, it doesn't mean that you're just there forever, but like it's encouraging to get there.
Is that hard to, when you have experiences like that, to not try to do it that way again, kind of?
Well, then you think like, oh, I got this, and
Right.
like I'm gonna do this next time, and then it's like, oh wait, that's missing the point, right?
It takes the
Anytime you are forcing it or think you know it, then you don't know it, right?
Yeah.
So just trying to ease off and maybe let it happen, and if it's happening, sort of be okay with it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who does?
I think I'm getting better at it. You know?
Yeah.
There's a higher incidence of that, but still,
Yeah.
there's sometimes this show that just is terrible, and you're in this car crash and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, should we try to make a little bit more magic happen?
Yeah. We'll just make something up.
Sure.
Let's do it.
all the toll up in mine, and the town we hold, it's mine, and the tails I kicked, they are my own. The sails I've raised, I've raised them, raised them, raised them, raised, I've raised mine. All the skies I shift my home. Couches I left my home. Stars I roll, yes I roll my own. Streets I lay on, I lay on, lay on, lay on my own. Look out for my home.
We got it.
It's getting all moody in here.
I don't ever want to play solo again. Skrondaka.
So how I was thinking just now about, well, the music we were playing, but but a little bit before that, I was thinking about the difference between writing and composing music. Is that, like, how does that process differ for you? Is it just all this kind of visceral,
Difference between writing
like words?
words. Oh yeah. They're very different. Yeah, I mean, they're ostensibly from the same field, but
Mm-hmm.
words are always a lot harder because they're more specific. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, attaching words to music is really difficult because music can be, you know, obviously mean a lot of different things or spark a lot of different feelings to different people. And
Yeah.
the emotions can be ambiguous or ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you have music and a melody, and then you try to attach words to that. I always think of it as like you've got this balloon, and the words are like, you know, this ballast that you're trying to, you know, if you have too much, it's going to pull the balloon down, and you got to get the right weight to it, you know,
Uh-huh.
so that it all sort of hangs in the air together in this delicate balance.
Uh-huh. So when you think of, like, composing, like, I read some of your writing on your website, and yeah, it seems like this very composed whole piece. I mean, that's kind of how I felt about the album you made too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you think about the whole when you're creating
The album,
writing
is-
as opposed to music? Like,
the whole being what, the album?
well, that's what.
Yeah,
What is the whole?
or whatever the whole,
Yeah.
whatever's the whole. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what makes it interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems to be shifting away from that. I guess it always seems to be shifting away from that. Like,
Yeah.
where songs are more important just as their own chunks. But,
Yeah.
you know, the writer in me likes there to be a narrative and an arc to it and a theme
Uh-huh.
to a bunch of songs, that it's not just filling up a certain amount of time, but it's got a purpose, that they all enhance each other by being together, you know?
Yeah.
The same way that a chord enhances a melody note. You know,
Yeah.
like one note could sound different depending on what's underneath it. I think
Right.
songs on an album, like sometimes you shift the track order differently, and it's like, wow, this song feels slow now, you know?
Yeah.
I used to think this song was all right, you know? It's like it comes after these fast songs, and now it's
Uh-huh.
slow, you know? It's just fascinating how nothing is really pinned down with music.
Yeah.
It's all shifting, and it's all in relation to other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's what's great about longer formats as opposed to cutting everything up.
Do you tend to write, like, the music always inspire the words? Or is it
Yep.
ever the other way around?
Yep.
It's always that way?
Yeah. It's just easier to write music than words, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
think that's pretty universal. Well, good words, you know.
then what do you enjoy about the writing process?
You know, I used to think it was torture and just nothing. Like the only good thing was having finished it. You
Yeah.
know? But I started doing this 20 song game. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
You get a few people to pick a day, and you're in your own space, a studio or whatever,
Okay.
and you have all day free. And so you start at 8 a.m. and go till 8 p.m.
Okay.
And each person on their own has to write and record 20 completely new songs.
Oh,
Not just working on something you started, but just
Yeah.
completely new songs. And it's and you communicate with each other. The idea is that you have some more encouragement because other people are doing it.
right.
And then you get together that night and listen to them all while you eat Thai food or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially in Portland.
yeah. And I've done it 4 times now, and each time it's like brought me to a new level of really just like appreciating writing.
Yeah.
Because you're in this day, and it's like, well, I have to do this, and I cleared my schedule, and I don't feel guilty about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's joyous. It's like taking a drug, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, next, I want to write a country song next. I've always wanted to write a country song. It's
Totally.
like, why couldn't I have not have done that yesterday? You know, like, there's no reason.
Yeah.
It's just suddenly you're given this ability, but that ability's always there. That's what writing is great.
Yeah.
You're creating worlds, and you can do whatever you want, you know?
Yeah.
It's
That's
like,
how I recently did a thing somewhat similar where I composed music for 24 hours straight.
Ouch.
And that was a trip. It was just this crazy, you know, like it became this themed thing because I'd set aside the time to
Yeah.
go do this thing, and you know, I just gave myself permission to do whatever I wanted, and all of a sudden just turned into
Yeah.
this world that was created, like
Yeah.
you're saying.
and these things come out that you never would have. You normally write a song, it's like, oh, I'm struck by something, and I'll sit down and write something. But like
Right.
this process, like things come out in the 12th song
Yeah.
that you never would have struck you know, just while you're driving around.
Right.
But it's amazing, you know? And you just get to this place where it's like, you know what I always wanted to write about? I wanted to write about that one day where that person did that fucked up thing, you know? And you just realize what a gift it is. And so I've been trying to just appreciate that anytime I need to, you know, like, okay, I need to set this afternoon aside and make some demos for this new dance piece.
Mm-hmm.
Not think of it as torture, just think like, it's going to happen. I'm going to finish with something. And why not just be joyous, have fun with it while I'm doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just exploring and like trying things, and it's given me this gift of knowing like things can look bad for a while. Like in the writing of something,
Yeah.
it can look pretty bleak, and one thing can turn it around. You know, like one instrument, or just like starting something on the 2 instead of the 1, or whatever it is, you know.
Right.
It can be like really close, but still not be anything, and then a little thing snaps it together.
Yeah.
And just having faith that you'll find that thing, you know,
Yeah.
and that all your work is not fruitless, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the frustration of writing is that voice that's in your head, just always like, "Oh, stupid! This is stupid. Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't shut up.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Well, we're just wasting time. This is an hour now you spent on this stupid," you know.
Right.
And to just like, it's still gonna be there, but just not listen to that voice and just keep going.
Yeah.
And just know it's gonna work out.
Why do you think people have such difficulty giving themselves permission to do that?
I think it's just the people are more believe that your brain is the ultimate decider of everything, and it's a powerful machine, and it interprets this world, and it does a lot of great things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say everything about the reality, you know? Because
Yeah.
I can think in my head right now, the world is a terrible place and everyone hates me, but that doesn't make it any different than a second ago when I was thinking, you know, the world is a great place, you know? It doesn't change the world, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so to just accept that and be like, it's powerful and it tells us a great story, but it's not always true.
Yeah.
And if it's bad and if it's in a bad place, that doesn't mean that even the things that I'm making are bad. If I sprained my ankle and my foot really hurt while I was working,
Right.
I would say my foot hurts, but I can still make something, you know?
Yeah.
If my brain is in a weird place, why can't I just say the same thing? It's like, okay, it's spinning around in a weird place. That's okay. It's a
Yeah.
localized pain and it's fine, you know? Just
Yeah.
because we think of ourselves as our brains, you know, but we're just as much our bodies or our stomachs or our hearts, you know?
Yeah.
And just remembering that, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
This is great.
thank you.
And thank you, Wilson, for
Yeah.
being a
it's
part of
Wilson
this.
Medina on the old soundscape back
Yeah.
there. I collaborated
Sounds
with us.
great.